Okay, everyone, we are at Tuesday and, I guess we're a day closer to Celtic being back in our lives. That wonderful team who made us all pretty unhappy on Sunday have already been forgiven as far as I'm concerned, and I just can't wait for, about 11 days now until they're back in our lives at home to Motherwell. Today's video, we're going to have a little bit of a chat about the international break, what's going to go on during the international break, a bit of Ange news as well as looking ahead to what is up for Celtic when we return from said break. I've basically spent far too long this morning making some graphics, so I'm going to definitely show you them and chat a little bit about that. So yes, very first international break of what I think is a fairly weird season so far, certainly in terms of what we're used to supporting Celtic. Obviously, start of the season was very different to what we usually get. Usually have qualifiers. This year we had, probably about 5 or 6 weeks at the start of the competitive stuff of just weekend football. Kind of like the old days, not that I would remember that. Then we started getting a couple of games a week. We had the game up in Dingwall. Things were really threatening to take off with the Derby win, 4-0 by the way, against Rangers. Then we went into Real Madrid a couple of days later and it was all kind of heating up. And then it all kind of stopped again. We had no weekend game. And then the last week was just very, very weird, I would say. So, yeah, it's been strange. Having said all that, I am holding out hope that things are going to get very tasty from the resumption at the start of October. This is what our October looks like as I show you graphic number 1 of the video. And spoiler, yes, it's one of the most intense months I can ever remember when supporting Celtic. Where do you start with that? Well, I guess the obvious places with that home game against Motherwell on the 1st of the month. That is the first of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 matches in the month. And yeah, Motherwell's probably the easiest one. They get very, very tricky as the month goes on. We have the 2 games against Leipzig in the Champions League there at the start, the away game on the Wednesday, the home game the following Tuesday. We've got Shakhtar coming to Glasgow on a Tuesday night as well. The Motherwell game there on the 19th is a League Cup game. And then we've got 4 Saturdays in a row, which is one of the advantages of playing in the Champions League rather than the Europa League. Some tasty ones there as well. The Edinburgh teams coming back to back, including a trip to Tynecastle. And we finish the month with a rather tricky away game to Livingston. And if you're wondering about November, by the way, it does get a little bit easier. We start with Real Madrid at the Bernabeu. It's weird, I kind of have been so focused on like the period up to the international break, the Derby against Rangers, the Real Madrid game, the whole Champions League being back at Celtic Park thing, that I kind of forgot that after the international break is when it really heats up. That is when our Champions League fate is going to be decided. It's where we can try and get back to Hampden in the League Cup and not to mention, trying to come away with 5 wins from 5 in the league in October. So it's going to be really, really tasty. My sense is that this isn't a bad time, certainly not a horrendous time for Celtic to be going into an international break. I think as supporters, from our point of view, very frustrated with Sunday. Having said that, I do feel a little bit better today. Hopefully you do as well. I think from a player point of view, they'll still feel very in control of what they're doing. It's been a decent start to the season, I would say, but they've got so much more to offer in I think it's 13 games in total before the World Cup. So I think they'll feel very calm. Probably some of them quite glad for a little bit of time off, whether that be playing international football or spending it at Lennoxtown. There's just brilliant games there to really whet the appetite. Leipzig, Hibs, cup tie at Motherwell, Hearts, Shakhtar. I mean, how tasty is that? Very tasty is the answer. In terms of the international break, let's just take a wee look at what our players are going to be up to. There are a few players away in international duty. I would call that about a 50-50 split. The players away with Scotland there, Callum McGregor, Greg Taylor, Anthony Ralston and David Turnbull. Scotland are playing 3 games in the Nations League. They've got Ukraine twice with Ireland at Hampden in the middle there. Japan, we've got 3 players away with them. Puro Gucci left on his own, at least he'll have the interpreter. Kyogo, Hatate and Maeda all away with Japan. And it's interesting with Japan because they're actually scheduled to face United States and Ecuador, but they're not playing over in Asia. Thankfully, mercifully, they're playing in Germany, I believe. I think they're playing in Dusseldorf, certainly for one of their games. So no real long distance travel for our Japanese players this time, which I think is a welcome bonus from a Celtic point of view. Elsewhere, in terms of the countries who have just one Celtic player, we've got Josip Juranovic away with Croatia. They're facing Denmark and Austria in the Nations League. We've got Aaron Moy, who has kind of stepped into the Tom Rogic position of being our lone Aussie. They have a double-header against New Zealand, 1 game in Brisbane, 1 in Auckland, so Moy doing the most travelling of any player in Celtic squad, but he's joined by 6 other Aussies playing in Scotland at the moment, which is pretty interesting. Elsewhere, Haksabanovic, who's obviously a kind of new addition to this, he's away with Montenegro. They've got Bosnia and Herzegovina and Finland in the Nations League. Liel Abada now our sole Israel player. They're playing Albania and Malta. We've got the legend himself, Georgios Giacomakis, away with Greece. They're playing Cyprus and Northern Ireland. Vasilis Barkas also in there too. From a Greek point of view, he's obviously on loan from Celtic with Utrecht. And finally, in the Denmark 21s, we've got Matt O'Reilly. They've got a double header with Croatia. And on the right-hand side, in terms of the players left at Lennoxtown, Joe Hart's in there, as well as the other 2 goalkeepers, Ben Siegrist and Scott Bain. A lot of defenders not being called up for their countries for certain reasons. Starfelt, as we know, is injured at the moment. Same goes for Cameron Carter-Vickers, who was actually in the USA squad. We were about to get Kyogo v Carter-Vickers. Imagine how amazing that would have been, but we've been robbed of that. I guess we'll just have to wait to the World Cup final for that to finally happen. We've also got Moritz Jens, who's obviously nowhere near a call-up for Germany. Stephen Welsh, I believe now is too old for Scotland's 21s, so he's going to have international breaks to himself, unless he makes a step up for the full Scotland squad, which, you know, on Sunday's evidence, he'd be a bit away, but Scotland aren't exactly blessed for great centre-backs at the moment. And Alexandro Bernabé's there at Lennoxtown, James McCarthy. We've got Oliver Abildgaard, who is not in the Denmark squad. No real shame in that. Ideguchi, James Forrest and Jota. How far do you think Jota's away from a Portugal call-up? I mean, they've got some decent attackers, that team. I guess he would have to do something major in the Champions League for us, and even then it may not be enough. So yeah, not a bad thing to have him resting. He can certainly be a big player for us in the coming months. So yeah, that's what we're looking at. So plenty of players away, only really Aaron Moy making a kind of journey to the other side of the world, and hopefully he comes back fit. Hopefully they all come back fit. No doubt there'll be a couple of wee injuries. Wouldn't it be lovely if we got everybody back fit and healthy and raring to go, and maybe Carter-Vickers and Starfelt back as soon as possible as well. Now, Ange is also on his travels this international break as well. He's away back to his homeland, Australia, according to the Accor Stadium Twitter, who earlier tweeted, Ange and Celtic officials will be out and about in Sydney this week as planning continues for the Sydney Super Cup. Here's a wee reminder of what this tournament looks like. It's ourselves, Sydney FC, Western Sydney Wanderers, and Everton as well. Celtic playing a couple of matches, once against Sydney on Thursday 17th of November, a couple of days before the World Cup starts. I've been doing my best to try and work out the kick-off time. It's very difficult given that not only time zones you're dealing with, but also changes in the clocks as well. So I believe it will be an 8:45am kick-off for us against Sydney FC, and an 8:30 kick-off a few days later on Sunday the 20th of November when we take on Everton. So Ange is away home. If you happen to bump into him in Australia, say hi from all us Scottish people. I dare say he'll be doing a fair bit of work as well while he's away. Maybe he'll come back with a wee Aussie player or two as well. In terms of us, we will have our very own Aussie legend back on the channel tomorrow, Scott McDonald, that is, of course, and we'll be chatting to him about what's going on at Celtic at the moment. It's been a while since we've spoken with Scott, so should be plenty to get through.